And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Good evening, San Diego. Welcome to the Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis. I am a top producing real estate broker, a licensed California attorney, and an NMLS licensed mortgage broker. I truly am San Diego's real estate expert. I am here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. to discuss anything and everything related to San Diego real estate. As always, I welcome any questions or issues that you would like to hear me discuss on the show. There are several ways that you can contact me. First, you can call me at 888-242-2272. That's 888-242-2272. You can also email me at michael@michaelgaddis.com. That's michael@michaelgaddis.com. Or you can visit my website at michaelgaddis.com. Before we get started into some heavier stuff, I want to talk something a little bit lighter. San Diego was recently ranked among the top U.S. cities for trick-or-treating. San Diego ranked number 8th behind San Francisco, San Jose, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Phoenix, Chicago, and Boston. Now, San Diego was ranked among the best U.S. cities to trick-or-treat by Zillow, whose trick-or-treat index represents cities where kids can get the most candy in the shortest amount of time in the safest areas. The ranking used 4 variables: Zillow's median home value, housing index, crime rates, and population age. So San Diego should be really proud about that. So anyway, on to the more serious stuff. Due to my experience and background, I frequently handle unusual and more difficult real estate transactions. I typically assist homeowners with short sales, probate sales, bankruptcy sales, and divorce sales. No married couple wants to think about it, but statistics indicate 40 to 50% of all marriages end in divorce. If those statistics are true, married couples have a little better than a coin flip's chance of staying married. To say that divorce can be stressful is an understatement. I was curious as to exactly how stressful a divorce can be on a person, so I did some research to find out. I came across a website from the American Institute of Stress, which referred to the Holmes and Rahe Stress Scale. The Holmes and Rahe Stress Scale is a list of 43 stressful events that have been assigned a point scale. The scale goes from 1 to 100, with 100 being the most stressful event. For example, a vacation has a point value of 13. Changing to a different line of work has a point value of 36. Being fired from a job has a point value of 47. Death of a close family member has a point value of 63. So what is the point value given to a divorce? 73. According to the Holmes and Rahe Stress Scale, divorce is the second most stressful event that can occur to a person. The only life event with a higher total is death of a spouse, which has a point total of 100. I would like to point out that in many cases, divorce is not the only stressful event that a couple going through a divorce are going through. For example, if someone is going through a divorce, has also been fired from work, is living in a new place, and obviously has a major change in financial state, his stress score would be 178. Working with people under this considerable amount of stress can be challenging. As a listing agent, I have experienced the stress of divorce many times while trying to sell a home for a couple. I know the challenges I go through as a listing agent. However, I thought it would be interesting to hear from the attorneys that specialize in family law. Today, my guests are 2 of the top family law attorneys in San Diego. They are used to working with people suffering from the immense amount of stress due to divorce. They are here today to discuss the challenges of dealing with real property and divorces. My first guest is Fran Setzer. She is a certified family law specialist and partner in the family law boutique firm of Lewis, Warren, and Setzer, LLP. For those of you that do not know, a certified family law specialist needs to take and pass a second bar exam focused exclusively on family law. Ms. Setzer also holds a master's degree in business administration from New York University Stern Graduate School of Business. Ms. Setzer's practice is limited to the area of family law, handling complex property, custody, and support matters. She has presented numerous times at a variety of seminars on the topic of family law in the San Diego area and is a member of the State Bar of California, the San Diego Family Law Bar Association, and the Collaborative Family Law Group of San Diego. She also sits on the Board of Lawyers Club of San Diego and serves as a board member of Teen Volunteers in Action, a community service organization for teenage boys. Fran's website is lwsfamilylaw.com, and her email address is Fran, that's with 2 N's, FRANN, at lwsfamilylaw.com. Fran, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to your listeners about a topic that, for better or worse, does touch an awful lot of people, approximately 50% of the population. So thank you for having me today.
Well, Fran, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in family law in the first place.
Well, obviously, years ago when I was in law school, just like every other lawyer, you have an opportunity to look at a lot of different areas of the law. I think that I know who I am and what I would like to bring to my practice, and a lot of that has to do with wanting to help people. And I know that sounds terribly altruistic, but the truth is that people come and see lawyers because they have problems. I do have a variety of education. I am well educated with 2 bar exams and an MBA. And what I really choose to do in my practice is to bring all of those skills to bear to help people through a time with as least stress as possible and get them to the other side and assure people there is life after. You had talked about that stress index of 73. I think that every family law attorney can attest to at least a 73 for most folks. But my job as an attorney is to try to keep it at 73 or lower.
You know, it's interesting. They should have put a stress index in there for attorneys. Attorneys representing the people in divorce should be like 100 stress index. Well, thank you, Fran. Sure. My second guest is Lori Stock, a family law partner with Solomon Ward, Seidenworm, and Smith, LLP. I will just refer to her firm as Solomon Ward for the sake of simplicity. Lori is a former prosecutor and naval officer. She has been an attorney since 1988. Lori, a San Diego resident since 1980, holds an AV rating from Martindale-Hubbell and is a past president of the San Diego Uptown Sunrise Rotary Club. Lori enjoys community service, travel, outrigger canoe racing, and running. Lori's website is swslaw.com, and her email address is lstock@swsslaw.com. Lori, thank you for joining us as well today.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
How did you get involved in family law?
I practiced a little bit, so I started out as a prosecutor for the first couple of years, and I really enjoyed trial work. Fran knows this. Family law is a very court-intensive practice. We spend a lot of time in the courtroom, so that was something that attracted me to the practice. And it's also a very complex area of practice, so we have an opportunity to work with clients on a number of issues: real estate, as you know, tax issues, custody, visitation, you name it. I mean, there are a whole businesses, buying and selling, valuing businesses. We get involved a lot with forensics. So it's a really fascinating, rich area of practice. And so those were sort of the intellectual drives for me. And then I think, similar to Fran and probably all family law practitioners who truly enjoy the practice, this idea of being able to work with someone who really needs your help on a very personal level to help them through this process, sort of see them through the other side. I think that's exactly what Fran said. And I agree. I think that was a strong driver for me. And it's been the thing that's kept me interested and involved for all these years.
Well, I think that's a good point, because I think that a divorce is one of the lowest points that a person can have in their life. And they need a guide. They need someone to help them through this, because they're emotionally unstable, I would imagine, at this point in time. Going through this has got to be emotionally taxing on them. And I guess you guys almost need a secondary degree in psychology sometimes, because it really does require you guys to have a special understanding of the stresses upon these people and why they react the way they do, whether it's your client or the opposing client. So let's get on to our questions. Question number one I have for you guys today. I'll direct this to Fran. Fran, I think we can all agree that a divorce is probably one of the most difficult events that a person can face during their lifetime. I imagine that the bar of difficulty is raised when real estate is involved. What is the process that you go through with your client when you have a client that when real estate is involved?
Well, I think that one of the most important things is for a client to do an assessment of not only just the financial reality of a home in a divorce, whether you can keep the home, is the home underwater, what is the value of the home, is there equity in the home. But there's also in a divorce, which I think is unique to when people are just deciding to sell a home, the emotional component within a divorce. So many clients, and I think Lori would probably bear this out, seem to feel that if they keep the home, they've somehow won something, or it will stop their life from changing down the road. But the truth is, it does not necessarily make sense for most people to be able to keep their home. And I would say if I had to take a poll of my clients, the ones that did keep the home, I would say a year later or so, they will come back and say to me, you're right. I did not necessarily want to keep this home. Besides the fact that perhaps financially it is a stretch for one person to keep the home, there's ghosts, I'll often hear people say, in this room, in that room, and perhaps that wasn't the best move. So there certainly is an emotional component. Another factor is that in California, the home, when you're going through a divorce, is often the bulk of the marital estate. There's a tremendous amount of equity and assets within the home. So when we take when someone owns real property in a divorce, that's something that we look at very, very carefully.
Well, when we get back, we're going to ask the same question to Lori Stock. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
Saying, I don't know, is no longer acceptable. This is AM 1170, The Answer.
Hey, Craig Sewing here, consumer activist. You hear me every day at 6 p.m. on KCBQ. My goal is to help you win in any marketplace. One of the things that applies to every single person that listens to our show and that's listening right now, you have a credit score, and more likely than not, it has inaccuracies on it. Nobody seems to understand how these things work. Here's what I can tell you. I have a credit expert that's a partner in the show named Aran Sinai. I call him the credit magician. If you've ever had any issues with your credit, you want to get your scores up, maybe a foreclosure, bankruptcy, or maybe just a collection. You know, the city of San Diego can send parking tickets to collections. Crazy. Well, bad credit's a choice. Reach out to Aran Sinai. How do you do that? You go to our website, AmericanDreamElite.com. AmericanDreamElite.com. Hit me up on the contact form. I'll connect you with Aran. AmericanDreamElite.com. If you've ever had any credit issues whatsoever, AmericanDreamElite.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 80011.
Hi, this is Ajay Gupta from the Gupta Legal Center. You've probably seen us on the American Dream TV show and the Craig Sewing radio show. We're honored to be featured as the exclusive real estate attorney and honored to be trusted by Craig and all of his top producing realtors. Our office was also featured as a super lawyer representing California's top 5% of attorneys. You may not know whether you need an attorney or not. My suggestion is you kind of have an idea whether there's a problem or a question. So I suggest if you don't know whether you need an attorney or not, give us a call. We're happy to pick up the phone, give you a call back, figure out what it is that you need to have addressed. If we can't or don't know the issue, then we can definitely point you in the right direction. Our phone number is 619-866-3444. That's 619-866-3444, and that's GuptaLC.com. GUPTALC.com.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. Right now, we're continuing with our discussion with Lori Stock, a partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer, in regards to divorce and the impact of divorce on real estate transactions. So before the break, we had asked Fran a question, which I am now going to pose that same question to Lori. So the question again is, I think we can all agree that a divorce is probably one of the most difficult events that a person can face during their lifetime. I imagine that the bar of difficulty is raised considerably when real estate is involved. What is the process that you go through with your client when real estate is involved?
I go through, obviously a similar process to Fran's. We have to determine whether or not the client is actually able to afford the residence. And often, I think it's an evolving process with the client. So they may have reasons they want to stay in the house that aren't really practical when it comes down to it. So one of the big reasons is if they have children, they want to maintain the home for the stability of the children. And often they want to stay in the same neighborhood for those same reasons, and also to allow the children to stay in the same school district. So I find those to be practical issues that come up when there are children involved. And whether or not that's a driving factor, the thing we have to get to really quickly is, can you afford the house? And can you afford to finance the house on your own? Because the spouse who's not going to remain in the house is not going to want to stay on the loan and continue to be liable for that obligation. So I try to get to that pretty quickly because it is usually such a large asset of the community estate. We really need to get that settled up front.
Well, I think you point out a very important point. A lot of times, people would like to keep the house, but they have to be able to sustain the payments themselves. And part of that is, because I'm a mortgage broker as well, I know that you have to refinance or somehow get the actual loan in your name so that the other partner is not necessarily bound by the terms of the note anymore. And that can be challenging, especially in California, especially San Diego, where the median house price is so high, which means that when you qualify for loans, your debt-to-income ratio has to be there. So when in a divorce, when obviously household income is split up, all of a sudden it can be a lot more challenging for someone to be able to retain a home. So, Lori, I'm going to ask you our next question. I'm going to start with you this time. I'm sure that you have to give advice and listen to clients whose emotions are heightened during divorce proceedings. I have listed homes for sale for many couples going through a divorce. Every once in a while, I get caught up in a situation where neither side can agree on anything, even simple things. How do you deal with a client that is clearly letting their emotions get the best of their decisions?
And I don't know if you're talking about all the decisions or maybe the decision related to selling the house, but I'll focus on that because I know that that's what you do and sort of what our focus of our program is. So if we, obviously we try to spend time negotiating an agreement because then we get an outcome that both sides can agree to, whether or not they are completely in favor of it. So, compromise where it hurts each side a little bit. Often we can't do that. It is just not workable. We'll meet, we'll confer, we'll exchange offers. Nothing comes of it. And what we have to do sometimes is go to the court for a decision. And it can be a decision about who stays in the house temporarily. And it could be the ultimate decision about whether or not the house is going to be sold. And the bottom line is that if the parties cannot agree about what to do with the home, it will be sold. I mean, that is the bottom line. A court will not get involved in negotiating or nobody can be forced into a settlement, I guess is what I want to say. So ultimately ends up in front of a judge, and really the decision will be sell the house.
Wow, Fran, same question.
The only thing I agree completely with Lori. I think the only thing that I would add, and it may not be as pertinent today, but there was a time several years ago where a lot of the houses, the situation, they'd be more in distress. And the court will certainly take into account their main goal to some degree would be to preserve the asset and to not let people's credit scores be harmed, et cetera. So you can do more of an expedited hearing if necessary to somehow get the house sold, make sure payments are made, et cetera. So that's something also to look at, to make sure that through this process, even though it's being sold, who's staying in the house, who's responsible for payments on the house, what condition does the house have to be left in. So those are also things as you're looking at the house going up for sale that are definitely considerations.
Well, I think one thing that can be really challenging is, one thing is if the other party is being difficult, but if your own client is somewhat being difficult and, maybe not necessarily drawing lines in the sand that maybe they shouldn't be drawing line, how do you deal with that? I mean, how do you talk to your client and say, look, I don't think you're looking at this properly? What's the best way to kind of address that situation? Lori, I'll let you take that.
Well, I think it depends upon where the client's coming from. So I think it's important, there's a great book called Getting to Yes by Fisher and Ury. I don't even know the year that it was written. I think I read it in law school. But it's a fantastic book, and it's all about how we engage in negotiations and reach settlements. And the idea is to identify the interest of the person. So some people are usually people with children, that's their primary drive. Some people are very fearful. Most people are going through divorce, whether they're the high earner or the person who needs the money. They're very fearful about their financial circumstances going forward. And so rather than looking at the position of my client, for example, if I have a client who I feel is not thinking clearly, I try to really get to what is their interest rather than what is their position. I want to keep the house. Well, let's talk about what that means. And so I really try to get underneath what they're putting out there, because often that's just almost like a barrier to what's really happening.
Agreed. This is certainly the time when the psychologist has to come out and a family law practitioner. And I think that most good family law practitioners, as I think Lori had said, or you, Michael, we do have to have an innate understanding of people, et cetera. And as Lori said, what you need to address with your clients is their ultimate reason and reasoning for really wanting to keep this house. What I find over time also, as you're speaking with a client, sometimes things shift. Sometimes when you talk with someone right after they are served with papers or right after they decide to make the split, their views can be a little bit different than 1 month or 2 months down the road, because there is that heightened emotion at the beginning of the process that they do tend to work through. I will be honest, I do refer many of my clients to therapists and encourage that during this process, they see a therapist, which can be extremely helpful during this time.
I can imagine, yes. Well, you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. I have special guests Lori Stock, a partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer. My next question, Fran, I'll pose this one to you. When a home is involved in a divorce, what are the most common options that a divorced couple has for dealing with the property? What are the options available to them?
Sure. Well, I'm going to parse out between the road that a case is taking. Most cases settle, and I think that Lori would agree that most cases don't go ultimately to trial within the courts. If you are settling a case, and whether that is through negotiation, some people choose to mediate, some people choose to go through the collaborative process, those are all different settlement means for the divorce to end up in an agreement. Then almost the sky is the limit. You can work out what is best for your family. You can work out what is best between the parties and make a decision as to, is somebody going to stay in the house? Is somebody going to stay in the house until the children graduate high school? And then it's going to be sold. Does the house need to be sold immediately and both parties are going to get homes within the same school district? You can pretty much delay a payout. So if there's equity and someone needs to be paid out, delay the refinance that has to ultimately happen. You can craft that on your own. If you go to court and if you go to trial, the judges are bound by law, which says that things have to be divided net equally. So they do not have the ability to craft these settlements. This is why I tend to, for most of my clients, really push settlement and the settlement methods, because they may not love the outcome, as Lori said, 100%, but you've got some control over it.
Well, Lori Stock of Solomon Ward, same question to you.
Well, I think Fran covered it, but it's an interesting point. Almost going back to your last question, Michael, about how do we talk to clients who may not really have a firm grasp of the reality, is to help them understand these settlement options and also how limited the outcomes are when they're forced into court, which in other words, if they're coming from an unreasonable place, if you will, I don't know how else to describe it, or maybe not a logical spot, they cannot or will not negotiate. I think it's helpful sometimes for them to understand, if we cannot settle this case, the options are very limited. The judge has to do, as Fran said, has to follow the law and divide the property equally, which ultimately results usually in the sale of the house.
So, in other words, it's in everybody's best interest to try to negotiate some sort of amicable settlement, because if it doesn't, it goes to court and there's really only one major resolution that can occur. So if they can't agree to it, then so be it. But I mean, they're like, for example, they can negotiate settlements for one spouse to buy out the other spouse. Maybe one spouse, as we talked about a little bit earlier, refinancing onto the house. Maybe one house stays in for a specified amount of time. I came across that one time where somebody, was agreed that they could stay in until the children were 18 years old. And at 18 years old, the house was supposed to be sold. So these are all examples of different types of agreements that you can come up with to try to resolve the real property without having to go to the judge.
Because the judge can't order that.
Right. Yeah, that's it. What's the most creative? Have you come across a really creative settlement before?
Yes. There's actually quite a few creative settlements. Besides folks staying, having families with the children stay in the house till a certain point in time. There's also nesting. Folks have to get along pretty well to do that. This is where people keep the primary residence until the children are of a certain age, which they decide, and they switch out of that residence to care for the children. So they will have one or two very small, let's say a studio apartment that they may share outside of the primary residence. And then they'll switch in and out of the primary home, living there, keeping the children in the home.
That is very creative.
I see you raising your eyebrows.
I have never. Yeah, my eyebrows are raised. I have never heard of that, but that is really incredible. Lori, do you have any example of a creative one?
That is the capper, that nesting arrangement. And I actually have one. I have a client right now who's doing that. And I think I've probably had about 3 in my entire career.
Wow.
Who have done this nesting.
That is an incredible thing and something I would never have expected you to say. Well, after the break, we're going to get back to our questions with Lori Stock, a partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer. You're listening to The Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, theanswer.com. Hear us anywhere in San Diego and the world. AM 1170, The Answer.
Hey, San Diego, Craig Sewing here. Look, one of the things that nobody likes to hear is that they got bugs in their home. Almost all California homes have some sort of bug or termite problem. It's not a cool thing to have bugs running around your house, so I'm going to help you get rid of them. I want you to connect with Lloyd's Pest Control. These are our good friends of the Craig Sewing Show. They can help you. They've been in business, putting bugs out of business since 1931. They'll do a free inspection for you. If you want to get your biggest investment checked out, make sure there's not bugs or termites, go to LloydPest.com. That's LloydPest.com and get a free inspection of your real estate today.
Did you know that you can make up to 6 times more with vacation rentals than with long-term leasing? By investing in vacation rentals and partnering with Vacasa, you can cash your check while we do all the work. Vacasa is a full-service vacation rental management company. We handle everything from guest marketing and booking to home maintenance and security. If you want more information about Vacasa, please visit online or call 503-305-4520. Again, that's 503-305-4520. Or visit Vacasa.com. That's Vacasa.com. Vacasa, vacation rentals made easy.
Hey, Craig Sewing here. There's no shortage of commercials out there, whether it's TV, radio, even social media. And heck, I even saw an infomercial for solar. You see it everywhere these days. Well, it's because solar is important. It can reduce your electric bill. It's good for the planet. and it's just a great thing to do with your home. It can add value to it. However, there is so much misinformation. Just because somebody is out there advertising does not make them a reliable source. I want to introduce you to my good friends with Baker Electric Solar. The owner, Mike Teresa, I've got to know him really well. This is the only company that I would recommend for you to reduce your electric bill through solar energy. Such a smart move. It's time to do it. Here's how you reach out to them. BakerElectricSolar.com. BakerElectricSolar.com. They will talk to you for free. They'll give you an assessment, and they will help you reduce that electric bill. And again, this is the only group that I trust. BakerElectricSolar.com.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. BRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. We're still here with Lori Stock, a partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer, discussing issues related to real estate and divorce. Now, we're going to kind of continue on with the next question. I'm going to pose this one to Lori of Solomon Ward. And this might be a question we kind of answered before, but let's just kind of go through it one more time. So what are the ways that a house can be sold while in divorce? I think you guys have pretty much touched on it. Just to reiterate, what are the different ways that can happen?
Well, typically, we try to resolve all the issues in a dissolution at once, the so-called global settlement. And it's kind of difficult to do things piecemeal in a dissolution. It seems better to gather up all the assets and the obligations and divide them. And that's what the law requires. So if we take the largest asset, which usually largest asset, the home, and we pull that out and try to deal with it, it can create all sorts of problems. But a house can be sold, and we saw this a lot when the market was really down and people were actually paying a mortgage on a house that was underwater, meaning that the value of it was less than there was no equity in the home. In fact, it was negative equity. And we could go into the courts, and we can still do that, and ask for relief. And judges will order homes sold in the midst of the dissolution. But I think the better practice, most of us believe, is to settle everything through put all the assets together and divide them. So the house is generally, if it's going to be sold at the end of the dissolution and as part of the property division. And then if it's going to be retained by one party, then the other party generally will buy them out. So we have to figure out what the equity is. And often the parties can agree. I mean, the house can be appraised. They can pay for an appraiser. Or the parties can just use comps and agree. Sometimes they have a pretty good sense of that. And then party one buys party two out of the home. And typically, as part of that arrangement, the person who ends up owning the home has to refinance it. So they do have to qualify in order to relieve the other party of their obligation. So those are usually the ways that we go about dividing the asset or settling the asset.
And I think that it's important. I know we look at the refi possibility almost right up front, because then that might knock out an option right then and there. I have had several cases where we sold the home almost right off the bat when the mortgage was high, because quite frankly, no one could afford to live in it. And the other person, people want to, after a certain point when they get divorced, live separate and apart. Not shocking. The problem, of course, is if there are 2 or 3 children, someone's been staying home with the child, someone is the wage earner. It's pretty rare, and courts realize this, and it is just the math. Even though I know emotions run high, one salary is not going to usually support 2 households in the same style. That really is the reality. So very often people will agree to put a house up for sale, which frees up cash for people to then at least live in separate areas, perhaps purchase smaller homes at that point in time. But I do that more often than I think before the case is done.
Yeah, Lori?
I was just going to mention that I've even had parties in the dissolution obtain a pre-qualification letter. So they'll go meet with a mortgage broker to see if they'll qualify for refinance. They may express a very strong desire to own the home ultimately, and then the reality can often be different. But we've used pre-qualification letters to do that.
Well, what percentage do you think of come to a global settlement of your clients? I mean, is it a huge percentage, or is it,
I would say for most of my clients, it's kind of rare that we pull the home out of the mix. And it seems to be if there's an extraordinary circumstance like they need, they're not extraordinary. They're actually circumstances that arise as part of the divorce. But still, it seems to me, I think most of my clients end up resolving the issue of the home along with all the other assets and debts.
And my cases tend to be split. Sometimes it depends on the people's financial circumstances when they walk in the door. But number one, we do, as I said, try to see about refi. I do send people to mortgage brokers, et cetera, real estate brokers to see how much your house is worth, what's your mortgage, can you refinance? And that does feed in from a settling a case perspective. Very often someone needs a certain income level or spousal support award to qualify to refinance if they do want to keep the home. And when parties are getting along, we can work on what would be that spousal support level for a period of time so that you can qualify to keep the house.
Well, it's interesting because it sounds like you guys have almost like a waterfall that you go down. The same thing that I do in my business. When people in distressed housing come to me, the first thing I do is see if there's a way for them to refinance. So if I can't find a way for them to refinance, then we go to loan modification. If we can't go to loan modification, then we go to short sale. If we can't do that, we go to deed in lieu. So it's kind of a systematic way of kind of, eliminating one, then the next, then the next, then the next. Lori?
I was just going to add the issue about spousal support. It's a really good point because then you see the interconnectedness of these dissolution proceedings. So often we can craft a settlement that includes a spousal support amount that will allow the spouse who wants to remain in the house to remain. Another thing is how the debt gets allocated because you mentioned, I think it was a conversation prior to the program, we were talking about the debt ratio.
Right.
And often with a credit card debt, that has to be allocated in a way that's going to work so that if this person's financial application is being viewed by somebody who might be a potential lender and they don't make the cut, we may have to move some of the debt around. So that can be a really good negotiating point, too, in the dissolution, along with spousal support.
Well, you mentioned something else, Lori, a little bit ago. You mentioned something about underwater homeowners, and that's another thing that I frequently deal with in short sales. So when you get a client that comes to you and their house is underwater, but they're yet emotionally attached and attempting to keep this house, how do you deal with that? What do you do when there's really no financial advantage to it? It's more emotional.
I would generally I would start by running the numbers. I would start by just sitting down and looking at the financial part of it. And I think even people who are really invested emotionally in this concept of remaining in the home, there's something about sitting down, putting pen to paper and figuring it out and realizing it just can't happen. And I think sometimes seeing it and going through that exercise is really helpful. I don't know what Fran's experience has been.
Agreed. I would say, though, also each case is so individual. I have definitely had clients keep homes that were just a little underwater, knowing that the market may turn. And we build that into the settlement, such as, let's see what happens in 3 years. You're going to stay here. You're going to pay on the mortgage. Obviously, housing prices in 2008, 2009 are different than they are today. So the people that might have opted because they were not $500,000 underwater, they were maybe $50,000 underwater back then. I had quite a few clients opting to stay and make payments on the home, and they do have a profit today.
Well, it's interesting. You guys are talking about putting pen to paper, and what I do is very similar because I believe that mathematics, it rules the universe. And I believe that if you put the math to the paper, the answer will be there whether you like it or not. And then anything above and beyond that is typically emotion. So, I kind of sit down with my clients and, especially if they're in an underwater situation to see if they want to keep the house. I'm like, well, let's see the math and tell me why. If you're going to be able to get a modification and you're talking about getting a modification that's $1,000 more than you could rent a house for, and you're underwater so substantially, it just doesn't make sense to me for you to keep the house. I said, so just mathematically, kind of show me how it is. So I do something very similar in that respect. So I have another big question for you, but my producer's over there waving his hand right now saying I got to take a break. So after the break, I have some pretty good questions for you guys that might be a little bit challenging for you. So you're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.
AM 1170, The Answer, and AM1170theanswer.com.
What if you could safely grow your retirement account with a reasonable rate of return with no risk of principal? Hi, this is Dave Harris with Wealth Preservation, specializing in retirement income and insurance planning. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans protect and grow their retirement savings. For over 4 decades, we have helped families achieve financial success. If you need help with your retirement planning, please visit me online or call me today. My number is 800-313-PLAN, or visit me online at wealthpreservationllc.com.
Hi, this is John Beaudry, the landscape contractor. There's nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans create gardens where they can spend time outdoors in our fantastic weather and save money on their water bills. I've helped hundreds of people create outdoor spaces where they can literally live outdoors. If you need help with your landscape, I'll be happy to discuss it with you for free. No strings attached, just great advice. My number is 619-929-9140, or visit me online at beaudrydesign.com. That's BEAUDRY design.com. I look forward to hearing from you.
Who would you rather have representing you when buying or selling your home? A real estate agent or a real estate and mortgage broker who is also a licensed California attorney? To sell your home for top dollar, or if you're facing a forced sale due to divorce, probate, short sale, or bankruptcy, you'll need the added value and marketing services of a realtor with the knowledge and experience of a licensed attorney and mortgage broker on your side.
Hi, I'm Michael Gaddis. I give you more, but it doesn't cost you more.
Visit MichaelGaddis.com. That's Michael, Gaddis.com. DRE 0146543 and MLS 28001.
Your home should be a place that you love coming to. Hi, I'm Nikki Klug, interior designer, and there is nothing I enjoy more than helping San Diegans live in homes that they fall madly in love with. I've helped hundreds of homeowners experience a sense of luxury, rejuvenation, and inspiration in their everyday lives. If you need help creating a home that you love, please visit me online at NikkiKlugDesign.com or call me at 619-948-7173.
Welcome back to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer. We're here today talking to two of the top family law attorneys in San Diego. We have Lori Stock, a partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer. So, I have a big question for you, and I'm going to start with Fran. Whenever I take a listing for a couple in a divorce, I make sure I clarify a few things in writing. One, my function is to sell their house for as much as possible and to guide them through the escrow process. Two, that I am not there to listen to them to talk about what's going on with their divorce. Three, I will not listen to either party complain about the other. I make that very clear from the beginning. And four, that cooperation is the key to a successful sale. Inevitably, though, one or both of the parties feel the strong urge to complain about the other spouse or to ask my opinion on what is going on with the divorce. I stand firm on my convictions and will not engage in that communication. However, keeping neutral can be challenging. What advice do you give real estate professionals facing this sort of dilemma?
I would highly, highly recommend that you do remain neutral. I think that you do yourself and the clients the best, your best service by remaining neutral. Certainly, I also think that if things do get out of hand, etc., and you do need some advice, I wouldn't necessarily be shy about possibly contacting, if they have an attorney and are represented, one of their attorneys. There are times that I do speak with real estate brokers, and we need to have that kind of an interaction. I would also say for people, the brokers that are representing divorcing clients, it's especially important also to understand what escrow instructions there are upon the sale of the house and where the money goes. I don't know if you've ever been on the receiving end of, oh, gee, we put it in this bank account and it's only in one party's name. That can create a major issue. So just in terms of advice for brokers where you do want to remain neutral, probably is wise to just take a look at upon the sale where the money's being directed to.
And Lori, what about you? What advice would you give real estate?
Well, Michael, I think what you're doing in making everything very clear and putting it in writing is excellent. I'm not sure if that's a standard practice, but it seems like a great idea. And I agree that if a real estate agent, a broker, listing agent, ever finds him or herself in a situation where things are swinging out of control and they're getting too much pressure from one party or the other, they just feel like they're getting in the middle of things more than they want to be, I think a call to lawyer, assuming the parties are represented, is really helpful. And probably I would make that a conference call. So I would get, if there are two attorneys involved, I would get both attorneys on the phone because they can probably work with their clients to help their clients understand that sort of interaction with the real estate agent is not particularly helpful.
Well, and it is not an industry standard. I do it because I want to make clear from the beginning. I don't want to end up in that. I've been through this many times. I do not want to end up in that situation, but I think you're right. I think it makes it easier if both sides are represented by an attorney. However, I have had it in the past where one party was represented by the attorney and the other person was represented by themselves, which makes it more challenging because who do you appeal to in that situation when one of the parties is represented by himself and he's overstepping his bounds?
I will always tend to say to people, because of course I think Lori can agree that we have cases where on the other side the other party is not represented. And that is a challenge because at least attorney to attorney, real estate broker, I mean, we are the voices of reason. We are the folks who have to try to rise a little bit above of what is happening between the couple to get them the best outcome and what's best for them given the circumstances. Without a doubt, I think that's the best thing is for everybody to talk and meet and confer.
Well, here, Lori, I have a question for you. I've actually run into situations where halfway through the transaction, for whatever reason, one of the parties stops cooperating, even if there's an agreement in place. Either they refuse to allow the house to be shown, refuse to sign paperwork, or refuse to sign needed work orders. In these situations, what do you do? And this is a two-pronged question. What do you do if you're representing the cooperating spouse, and what do you do if you're representing the uncooperative spouse?
Well, I think I think that we need to get very clear orders and agreements and a separate stipulation from the court. So I know you have a listing agreement. I get that. And the parties signed that. And you already mentioned it. But I think it's really helpful to either, if the house is being sold in the middle of the divorce, to get an agreement or a stipulation between the parties and be really specific about what that means. The parties will cooperate, and very specifically, they'll sign paperwork. They'll do it within a certain amount of time, those sorts of things. And they'll agree to show the house is listed. Another big issue is repairs. You didn't mention that, but quite often the parties have disputes about what do we need to do to get the house ready. We usually recommend that they take advice from the agent, the listing agent, the real estate broker, and that if it's something they can afford and agree upon, they'll do it. Side note. But if you are at the point where papers need to be signed and one party won't sign them, we can go to court and get the court to do what's called appointing an Elizer. And it's really a court clerk who literally can sign whatever needs to be signed. It can be the purchase agreement. It can be a sales agreement. Be a sales agreement in this case. So we can seek. They can't hold up the process indefinitely. It certainly slows things down because you have to go into court. And if you're representing the non-cooperating party, again, it's the same question you've posed to us a couple of times. And I think we need to sit down. I mean, that's when there aren't emails and there aren't phone calls. That's when the client needs to come into the office and we need to sit down and talk to them and find out what's getting in the way and also help them understand that they're under a written obligation, contractual or potentially court order to do what they're being asked to do.
My general practice is that when there is a house that is going to be sold, is I do a stipulation, which ultimately gets turned into a court order. So it's a written agreement, and I think that Lori mentioned that, very, very detailed. Who the broker is going to be, when it's going up for sale, sharing the costs of sale, repairs, who's going to be living there, how they're going to sell the house. I mean, we just get very, very detailed as much as possible on this sale. Because as Lori then mentioned, if someone refuses to sign documents, I mean, we've had people refuse to show houses. Someone who's very resistant, even though they do sign an agreement, they don't want to leave their house. So very often the broker will come and try to sell the house, and there's no one home and the locks are changed. I mean, I have had that happen, unfortunately. But we do have a mechanism once there's a stipulation, or you can go to court for an order on these things. They can appoint the alizer, et cetera, to get the process done. It's expensive, it's painful for everyone involved, but the process doesn't stop. For a non-cooperating party, generally I find that people don't cooperate either out of, usually it's out of fear and insecurity. I will always tell someone if they are not represented, just go for a consultation. You do not have to take an attorney on as full representation. I consult all the time with people on a variety of issues, whether it be what's the right level of support, custody, the value of the business, should I sell the house, what are my rights in regards to the house. So paying an attorney for an hour or two of their time can often allay a lot of fears that you're being taken advantage of somehow by someone. So sometimes that can actually solve a problem with a non-cooperating party.
Well, just so you know, that question I posed was a real-life experience of mine where there was a settlement agreement in place to sell the house, and just for no reason, the husband just decided he was not going to sign any of the paperwork. He just wasn't going to do it. He had no logical reason for making that decision. He just wasn't going to do it to be difficult. And eventually we were able to get him to sign and come around, but it didn't get to the point. That's why I asked that question. What happens if that? And it sounds like you answered that question. So my final question today, let me give you a real life example. I took a listing for a couple in the middle of a divorce. The house was a mess. It had significant deferred maintenance, so much that I was convinced that it could only appeal to investors willing to flip the property. I knew that FHA and VA buyers would not be able to purchase the property because the condition of the property would not pass FHA or VA appraisals. The house was vacant. I knew that if the couple put in about $15,000 to $18,000 into the house, they would be able to and fix some of the issues, that I could market the property for about $80,000 more than I could in its present condition. Since the couple were not on speaking terms and did not want to be in the same room with each other, I had to give two pitches as to my strategy to get them the most money. They agreed to everything I said, but disagreed on who was going to pay for the repairs. They were both saying they didn't want to do it. Finally, I told them that if they would not agree, we just had to list the house for $80,000 below what I thought it really could go for if they did the repairs. They both agreed, and ultimately the husband is the one who paid for the repairs. When the sale was getting ready to close, for above my list price, I might add, the husband's attorney filed a motion to be reimbursed for the expenses incurred to getting the house fixed up. The wife's attorney objected, stating that the deferred maintenance was caused by the husband in the first place, and he should not be entitled to reimbursement of expenses. We've only got about a minute or so I'm just going to ask for some quick answers. Who's right in that situation? Lori, I'll let you first.
Welcome to family law. Well, I think the better practice would have been to have an agreement in advance about how those expenses were going to be reimbursed. You're just inviting that type of controversy if you don't do that in advance.
Yeah, exactly. I would have gone to court for an order on that before I probably would have just forged ahead if things were really that acrimonious. Some cases, and you get a feel for it, are going to go through with relatively few blips. But if we're in that kind of a situation, you go to court for an order.
It seems like the way it should have gone down. And the problem with this particular case was the husband was not represented. He was representing himself. So he didn't want to go to court. He didn't want to pay attorneys. They seemed to be both on the same page about it, but she flipped on him on the end. But you're right. Something in writing would have definitely been better to prevent that. I want to thank you guys for coming in today. I want to again thank Lori Stock, partner at Solomon Ward, and Fran Setzer, a partner at Lewis, Warren, and Setzer, for coming in today. Again, for all of you listening, if you're in need of any type of family law issues, these are two of the top family law attorneys practicing in San Diego today. So look them up if you need them. So for more information on Fran Setzer, you may visit lwsfamilylaw.com. And for more information on Lori Stock, you may visit www.swsslaw.com. Thank you for listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on KCBQ AM 1170 The Answer. Good night, San Diego.